तू चलता चल तू चलता चल तू चलता चल.
Good morning to one and all present in this session and to all those who will be watching us online. Today we are going to have a session on Indian military history, and it is very important to know the history of the organization that we as defense aspirants so much want to join. And in order to help us in that, in order to help us learn more about the Indian Armed Forces, today we have Colonel Ajay sir with us, who will help us. I would like to introduce him. Colonel Ajay Singh is an alumnus of St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, where he graduated with honors in English literature. He has served in the Indian Army for 28 years, operating in various parts of the country and overseas. He took premature release in 2011 and since then has written over 220 published articles. He is the author of 5 books, namely The Battles That Shaped Indian History, A Spectrum of Modern Warfare, Through Orphan Dice, and On India's Battlefields, which covers 42 of India's battles spanning over a period of 3,000 years. His latest book, The Final Draft, was released in December. He speaks to a range of forums and appears frequently on television and also has co-hosted the television series Rakt Ranjit and Pradhan Mantri 2 for ABP News. In addition, he also writes screenplays for films and television. Sir, we are absolutely delighted and excited to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I hope my audio and my screen is visible. It's all clear.
Yes, sir. It's
Right.
totally clear.
Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank my dear friend and colleague, Colonel Nehru, for extending this invitation to speak to all of you. And it is a huge pleasure to be able to share the little I know about Indian history with young minds like you who are going to be shaping our history in the years to come. Okay, so today I am going to be telling you about the story of Indian warfare. Where did it begin? How did it start? What all did it go through? And I will take you all the way till 1971 war. And 1971 war, because we are celebrating 50 years of it now itself, I will cover in detail in the next session. So let us start with the story of Indian warfare. Now, when you take a look at a story, it always begins at the start. And the start of Indian warfare actually lies in the Mahabharata, in the battle of Kurukshetra. You have all heard about the battle. We all know about the Gita. But as you are all preparing to join the military services. So what is it about that battle which you all must understand? We know it was a battle between two clans, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Now, as per the Mahabharata, the battle took place over 18 days. And in 18 days, 4 million men took part in it, and 3 million men were killed. It was such a huge battle. Honestly, when I, as a military historian, study it, yes, I will realize the battle did take place. Maybe 3 million would be a little too much, but yes, there were lakhs and thousands of casualties on both sides. Now, much of what has come into our history, some of it is, I would say, misinterpretation of facts. For example, they say you fire a bow and arrow, you fire an arrow, which when it hits the other person, a snake comes and bites him. That may not be true, but what would be true is, in that arrow, it could have been dipped in some snake poison. So when it hit a person, it killed him instantly. They were arrows, they say, which when it hit somebody's chariot, the whole chariot caught fire. It exploded. Why was that so? Because in those days, Indians used camphor. They would dip their arrows in camphor and sulfur, a mixture. So when it fired and hit something, the friction caused it to burst into flames. What I'm bringing out is this battle had got good technology and knowledge even then, and they say it took place in 7th or 8th century BC. That means over 3,000 years from today, before our times. Even then, look at the impact it has had on India. We remember, I'm sure if I ask many of you how the battle was conducted, very few of us will be able to know it. But if I ask you, name me 10 heroes of the battle, all of you will one by one give me Arjun, Krishna, Karna, Yudhishthir, Brahma, Bhishma, blah, 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 blah. Because one thing the Mahabharata taught us was a lot of emphasis on heroes and hero worship. And it remained in India all throughout. We believed in individual prowess. So Indian soldiers have always been very good individually. The other thing it taught us was dharma, to fight the right war, the correct war. And a result of which Indians have never gone abroad. They have never been aggressors. We have always been somewhat pacifist. Maybe, not maybe, to our disadvantage. Perhaps had we been more aggressive and we've been more protective about ourselves, we wouldn't have allowed others to come and exploit us the way they did. Now, this battle took place 3,000 years ago. But in the years that followed, a lot of other battles happened. I'm not going to tell you all the small battles that happened because it is impossible to cover it in such a short time. I will only identify key turning moments and key battles which helped shape India's history. And when I talk about India, remember, in those days, India was not India like today. It was not a political India. India was a geographical landmass covering India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, everything. That was what you call the geographical concept of India. To our north lay the Himalayas, from which nobody could come in. On 3 sides below us, as you can see by the map, is the sea. And to the northwest lay the Hindu Kush mountains. If you see this map, you will see there are 6 arrows. These 6
Yes, sir,
arrows,
we can see.
wonderful, are the 6 passes in the Hindu Kush mountains through which the invaders used to come, foreign invaders. And the first invader who came was whom? Anybody remember the name? Who was the first?
Alexander.
the Great.
Alexander the so-called Great. Yes, you are right. And he came to India in 326 BC. That means almost 2,500 years ago. Now his army was the Greek Macedonian army, as they called it, was the most powerful army in the world. It had fought its way to 3 continents: Europe, Africa, and Asia. He wanted to conquer the entire world. And he was sure the world lay at the end of India. Yani ki, if you take a look at the map, someplace where Bengal is, this is where he anticipated the world would end. And once he reaches this spot, he would have been the king, the conqueror of the entire world. He crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and he came to the Jhelum River. Many of you who are from Punjab and have seen that area, the Jhelum River today is now in Pakistan. And when he came here, he encountered the local Indian ruler. Who was that? Who? Correct. Correct, Prakhar. You are both correct and also not correct. Because Puru, very right, very right. Porus was the name given to the king of the Pauravas. If you take a look at the name Porus, it is not an Indian name. It is a name by which the Greeks called this ruler who encountered them. Now, I am bringing out this point to just bring out one thing, that how even Indian in our own history, we forget our own heroes. We don't even remember the names. We still remember name by the names outsiders have given them. But notwithstanding that, when Alexander came across to the Jhelum River, on the other side was the king of the Pauravas with his army. He was the most powerful ruler of that area, ruling between the area between the Jhelum River and the Satluj River. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, there were other Indian kingdoms, the Maharaja of Taxila and other small rulers who actually sided up with Alexander to help him defeat Porus. And that has been one of the, not one of the, I think the greatest weakness in Indians then and even now. The ability to help outsiders weaken ourselves from inside. These local rulers helped Alexander, and when Alexander's army and Porus's army clashed near the Jhelum River, the two armies fought each other to a standstill. They said that Greeks had a system called the phalanx, in which they would have the infantry standing in long lines of spears, 10-foot long spears. And behind them used to be cavalry, horsemen, who used to come from the sides and attack from the side and the rear of the enemy. The Indians had elephants. Now, when the battle took place, it began at around 6 in the morning. They say the Indians were the only adversary which could break the Greek phalanx, break the Greek lines. The battle went throughout the day. Both of Porus's sons were killed in that battle. And finally, at 4 in the evening, Alexander came up to Porus, to Kumar. His real name was supposedly Kumar, the king of the Pauravas. Came up to him and proposed a truce. He agreed to the truce. And then he said, he gave the famous question, how do you want to be treated? And he gave a famous reply, as a king will treat another king. Now, this war was a draw, a stalemate, let me put it like this. But what the Greeks say is, this was the strongest and the most courageous opponent we have fought in 3 continents. Because of the battle which Porus gave Alexander, his army mutinied and refused to go further. And he turned back. He turned back and went back to Europe. This was the first invasion by an outsider. And though in history you read about the Mughals and the Sultanate and the British rule and all that, if the history of India is a 3,000-year-old history. And in that, our golden period lay in that period before the 10th century AD. In those 1500 years, We had the Maurya Empire coming up. We had the Guptas coming up. We had the Rashtrakutas coming up. We had the Cholas coming up. We had the Rajputs coming up. These empires were Indian empires which lived in strength, peace, and prosperity. It is not like they were they were fighting among themselves, all right. That was part of, I would say, politics. But when outsiders came, the Huns had come, the Kushans had come, the Mongols had attacked India. All of them were thrown back with heavy casualties. What I want to bring out is India till the 10th century was a very strong and a decisive power. But the change actually came about when the raids from Afghanistan began sometime around the 7th, 8th century. And the biggest change that happened, the biggest turning point of Indian history, which you all must be aware of, took place in 1192. That was when Muhammad Ghori defeated Prithviraj Chauhan in the Battle of Tarain. Tarain is actually the place called Thaneshwar. It is also near Kurukshetra, Ambala Kurukshetra, that area. You must understand this battle also quite well. You see, Muhammad Ghori had come to India not once. He had been coming for 10 years before that. And he had been defeated in 3 major battles. Not 21 as is brought out to be. 3 major battles he was defeated. And when he was defeated, unfortunately, in the last battle, which was the first battle of Tarain in 1191, he was allowed to go back. This is the big weaknesses Indians had. We never finished off a weakened opponent, but allowed him to get back, become strong, and come back again. He came back again in 1192. And the army of Prithviraj Chauhan, the Rajput army of Prithviraj Chauhan, and the battle and the army of Muhammad Ghori, both sides were almost equally matched. They battled over a day. In that battle, Prithviraj Chauhan was captured, taken to Kabul, tortured and killed. The Rajput army suffered a huge defeat. And unfortunately, ever since that day, no local, or when I say no indigenous ruler of India has been on the throne of Delhi. It was the Sultanate which took over the throne of Delhi. When I say the Sultanate was there, Delhi, remember I am talking, Delhi also was just a geographical place. Other Indian empires were prospering. In the south, the Vijayanagar Empire was prospering. Local empires were going on. But the seat of power, as we so fond of calling it, Delhi, was occupied by outsiders. And this state continued till 1526, when another invader, Babur, came in to India. This again, gentlemen, when Babur came into India, it is again a classical story of treachery which took place. Babur was invited by local rulers to overthrow Ibrahim Lodi, who was the ruler sitting on Delhi at that time. And when he was invited, he came in 1526. He came along with something the Indians had never encountered. What was that?
Artillery.
Cannons,
Correct.
Artillery.
Artillery and
cannons, and rummy
Cannons.
formation.
which formations?
Rummy formation.
Okay, very good, very good. It was actually, let me put it this way, he came with gunpowder. He had used gunpowder and to create cannons. He had got only about 24 to 30 heavy mortars. They should call them kazans. Around 80 to 100 light cannons, they call wazwans. And around 400 to 500 muskets. They were local firing, small little old-fashioned guns firing pellets at the enemy. The thing was, in India, nobody had been exposed to gunpowder or cannons or mortars. Somebody, I think it was Vikram, also brought out something nice. He had formations. Yes, he had a formation. He had a very good military plan. What he did was, when he came to Panipat, they first dug a huge ditch in front of their positions, and all his infantry, all his wagons were put behind that ditch. In between were the cannons, were the gaps through which the cannons could fire. And behind was cavalry. On both sides was light cavalry, and in the rear was heavy cavalry, heavily armored horsemen. What their plan was, when the opponent would come close, using what was the prime weapon in those days of the Indian army?
Swords and shield,
And
spears.
War elephants.
war elephants. Absolutely right. When they came with their war elephants, they came charging, the cannons opened up first, cannons and the mortars. Now these sounds scared the elephant. They turned behind and ran in their own ranks, causing havoc. While this was taking place, their muskets were firing, both hands were firing, and from the side, the cavalry came from the sides and the rear. They hemmed them into one killing ground in front of their positions, of their trenches, and in just 6 hours, defeated the army of Ibrahim Lodi. Now 6 hours means how many minutes is that? 300 minutes, correct? How long did the Mughal Empire last? Anybody?
For about 300 years.
300 years. So if you take a look at it, for each minute of fighting, they got 1 year of an empire. And when the first battle of Panipat, we all remember, because it brought Mughal rule into India. But more important than this battle was the Battle of Khanua, which took place the next year only. This battle was between the Rajputs, Rana Sanga, and Babur. And very, very, this was even a bigger tragedy. This was the biggest tragedy. Because the Rajput armies lost, and Babur was allowed to establish the Mughal Empire in India. In exactly the same way in which he fought the first battle. The Rajputs attacked with cavalry and elephants. They knew nothing about cannons or gunpowder. Their elephants got scared. They were shot down literally as they were charging. And in just one day, about 30,000 Rajput soldiers were killed, and the Mughal Empire established itself in India. That was the second turning point. The first, like I brought up to you, was Tarain. Panipat got in the Mughal Empire for 300 years. And even as the Mughals were establishing themselves, even as they had come, over 300 years, they were very strong for the first 100 years. Then they started gradually declining. Now, when they were declining, other empires were rising. Other Indian rulers were rising. And who were the strongest amongst them?
Marathas.
Marathas and the Sikhs. More than the Sikhs. In fact, the Sikhs, the Rajput and the Marathas were rising. But the Marathas were rising as the dominant power in India. Shivaji, I think he was India's greatest general. Many of us are not really aware of his exploits, but the manner in which, with nothing, he carved an entire empire which took over, fighting 3 enemies, and took over all of the decks. He had excellent people who followed him, the Peshwas, who took the Maratha Empire all the way to Kandahar in Afghanistan and Calcutta in the east, where the British East India Company had established itself. This Maratha Empire was, I would say, it had a period of about 70 years of glory when it reached the height of its powers. Now, very, very unfortunately for India, their rise was viewed with a lot of suspicion by the local rulers of North India, especially the Nawabs of North India. Siraj-ud-Dawla, Najib-ud-Dawla, who were the Nawabs of Aundh, today's Lucknow, UP. They invited the Afghan king. Anybody remembers his name?
Ahmad Shah
Ahmad
Abdali.
Shah Abdali.
Very nice. Ahmad Shah Abdali, to come from Afghanistan to fight the Marathas. They said it is a jihad, but it was no jihad. They had paid Ahmad Shah Abdali rupees 50,000 per day and 2 lakh rupees for every day in which they had to do actual fighting. So it was a mercenary force which had come here. Now, this force of Ahmad Shah Abdali, along with Siraj-ud-Dawla, Najib-ud-Dawla, and the Nawabs of North India, they got together against the Marathas. And they had come in 1760. That was the period. Okay, I'm going to explain it a little bit more in detail to you. They had come to near exactly where you all are, near Meerut. This entire force had established itself in the area of Meerut. When the Marathas had heard about it, they said, let us send a huge army to fight Ahmad Shah Abdali, destroy him so that he never comes back again. In many ways, I think that was a mistake. Because this Maratha army, in March 1760, it left from Pune, where I'm sitting here right now, and began marching over a period of 6 months. Slowly, very slowly, it moved, it climbed up all the way towards Delhi. Now, one of the reasons why they were moving so slow was because they had got their wives and children with them for the war. Again, a huge mistake which they had made. But they reached Delhi. They even captured Delhi, which was the high point of the Maratha campaign. Where was Ahmad Shah Abdali at that time? What did I tell you? Where was he?
He was
in
stuck
Meerut.
on the other side of the river.
Which river?
Yamuna.
Yamuna.
Exactly.
Yamuna.
He was the other. He was east of the. Like I said, he's near Meerut. That's why you're all from Meerut, no? All of you all.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, but anyway, the academy is Meerut. So that is just to give you an idea. The entire force was east of the Yamuna River. Where is Delhi? It's west of the Yamuna. Correct? You're aware of that, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is important to understand it. Okay. Now, when the Marathas captured Delhi, from Delhi, they began moving towards Panipat, which actually was again a mistake. They thought Ahmad Shah is going to remain on the other side of the Yamuna River because the river was flooded. He could not cross it. Remember, all those nice bridges which you see today crossing the Yamuna were not there in those days. But Ahmad Shah Abdali crossed the Yamuna River. As a military man, I must give credit to him for doing it. It was a very difficult thing to do, in which hundreds of soldiers got swept away. But the army crossed the Yamuna River and they came and put themselves behind the Marathas. Can you see this red arrow? Right? You can see this red arrow now here, right? This is where they put themselves. So the Marathas were now in the area of Ambala Panipat. Ahmad Shah Abdali was behind them. What does it mean?
The road
Which
for
means
Army
the enemy
was-
can see you.
And it means what their food, their supplies, their ammunition, other soldiers could not reach them.
No backup.
They were cut off.
no reinforcements.
Your supply
No,
lines
yes.
cut off.
Now, for almost 3 months, the Marathas were weakened by starvation. And then finally, on the 14th of January, 1761, they decided to break out of that encirclement. They got together for a final charge to try to break across this blockade which were being put out there. The battle went on for a full day. But unfortunately, the Marathas did have some initial success. They almost did break through. But at the end of the day, over 40 to 50,000 Maratha warriors were slaughtered in the plains of Panipat. If you take a look, those of you who are familiar with that area, Ambala Panipat, there's a place called Kala Am. And the reason why it is very close to Panipat. The reason they call it Kala Am is it is a mango tree. But that mango tree, for years, they said that was the area where the most of the fighting took place. And so much blood had fallen onto the ground that the roots of the tree was absorbing the blood, and for years after that, the mangoes of that tree was red and black in color because of the blood that it had been absorbed. That was the kind of a slaughter that took place that day. In my mind, that was the blackest day of India's history. It was the worst thing to have happened. Because had the Marathas won this battle, the history of India would have changed completely. The Marathas would have remained a strong dominant power, and Indian history would have taken a completely different direction. But very unfortunately, I mean, we have to admit it as military people, a lot of mistakes were made by the Marathas. There was a lot of infighting amongst the Maratha camps themselves. A lot of people did not help them when they had to be helped. And it allowed them to suffer. It led them to the greatest defeat in 1761. With the defeat of the Marathas, what has happened now? The strongest local power of India was weakened. So, who came after that?
Britishers.
Yes. With the Marathas being weakened, it sets the stage for the British to come into. I mean, not to come into India, they were already in India. They were already trading for almost 200 years. The British, the Dutch, the French. But now it allowed the British to establish an empire in India because there was no strong opponent. Remember, the Indians were always divided. Tipu Sultan, whom people hate, was actually the strongest opponent of the British. But the British used the Marathas to fight him. They used the Nawabs of the Deccan to fight the Marathas. They used both of them to fight Tipu Sultan. They led leader to fight a kingdom to fight against kingdom, helping one, then helping the other. And eventually, it reached a stage where the British emerged as the rulers of India. And they came about it in two major battles. The Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar. Again, in history, we remember it as the Battle of Plassey. It is not Plassey. It is actually Palashi, the Battle of Palashi in Bihar. I'm sure many of you have read about this battle. Can anybody tell me about it? Anybody?
It was fought between Siraj-ud-Dowlah and the British. British
Very nice.
sent the Mir Jafar to kill Siraj-ud-Dowlah and reinstate him as the Nawab of
Excellent.
the region.
Of Awadh. Excellent.
Awadh.
Very nice, Prakhar. Thank you. Right. Now, I must tell you about this. It was only the battle took place for just about one full day. The British had been doing a lot of cheating, looting, they'd been stealing, everything. And the one person who tried to stop them was the Nawab of Awadh, Lucknow ka, Siraj-ud-Dowlah. He was just 19 years old, but he was a strong, firm leader. The British had bribed his generals. What was the name?
Mir Jafar.
Mir Jafar. Even today, India remembers his name as the traitor, the man who sold India, which is very true. Because the British bribed him and 2 or 3 other generals with just one promise. They said, you help us defeat Siraj-ud-Dowlah and we will make you the Nawab. Now, this man was willing to sell off his own Nawab to an outsider. But I must tell you a little bit more about this battle. It is a very interesting battle. Because the Nawab, Siraj-ud-Dowlah had a very large army, almost 40,000 men. The British only had about 7,000 or 8,000. Most of them were, of course, Indian soldiers. But they knew that Mir Jafar would not attack because he was bribed. But all the same, Siraj-ud-Dowlah and his loyal generals, when they were attacking the British, they were actually pushing them back. And they would have won. Even without Mir Jafar, Siraj-ud-Dowlah and his loyal men would have defeated the British. Both sides were firing at each other with their cannons. And then it was a stalemate till about noon. But then what happened at noon? It began raining. Now, it is June 1757. In June, we all know that it rains in North India. It was 21st of June. But unfortunately, the gunners of the Nawab had forgotten to carry tarpaulins with them, to carry cover, waterproof covers, to cover their cannons and their gunpowder. So what happened was, when it rained, their gunpowder got wet. When their gunpowder got wet, their cannons could not fire. The British gunners had carried tarpaulins. They covered their guns with tarpaulins, and continued and attacking. So a small mistake, like forgetting to carry tarpaulins, actually cost India an empire. If only this small error had not been done, in spite of the traitors of Mir Zafar and the others, the British might have still lost. But this small mistake, compounded with other mistakes, allowed the British to first establish a foothold in North India through Palashi and Buxar, and then rule all of India for 190 years after that. That is a very, very, very long period. And let me tell you one thing. Don't be fooled by anybody who tells you that British rule was good for India, they built railways, roads, etc. It is a lie. No nation, nobody has done more harm to India than the British have. They looted the richest country in the world. They took everything we had. They killed Indians by the millions. Even the Mughals or the other invaders had never done what they did, because they did it systematically. To give you a very small example, you all know that in 1750, when the British came over, in 1847, what happened after 1857? What happened after that?
The First War of Independence.
I'm very happy you called it the First War of Independence and not the mutiny as the British call it. 100 years later came the First War of Independence, in which the Indian sepoys revolted against the British rule. Now, this campaign also went on for 1 year, but it was not, again, it was Indians who helped the British overcome our own men. There were Indian armies who were taken. The Sikhs were told, Sikhs, the Gurkhas, the so-called loyal soldiers, were used to crush the uprising. And after a year, when it finally finished off, the atrocities which the British committed on India, gentlemen, very few of us are aware of it. But they remember the soldiers who mutinied, most of them were from the Bengal regiment, the native Bengal regiment, as they called it. They actually induced a famine in Bengal, which killed over 2 million innocent Bengalis. So that period was terrible for us. And finally, when they left in 1947 and India got independence, India now became a geographical entity. We now became an entity in which we were India, Pakistan, West Pakistan, and East Pakistan. So the parting gift of the British to us was partitioning the country. But in spite of that, the battles of India did not finish. Because now, like, and remember I told you that Indians were always traditionally fighting Indians. The British ensured that happened by ensuring that Pakistan and India remained in a state of war because of the partition. The first war that took place after independence was the war for Kashmir in 1947. Both India and Pakistan claimed it. The Pakistani said it belongs to us, but Maharaja Hari Singh, the ruler, agreed to sign it, to join India. And the reason why they joined India was the Pakistanis had unleashed thousands of Kabalis. They are Afghan tribesmen and raiders who attacked Kashmir in October 1947. The kind of atrocity they committed there was unimaginable. And it is because of that that Kashmir joined India. The Indian army reached Srinagar literally with not even days, I would say hours to spare. They fought back the raiders, and they were not tribesmen. They were actually Pakistani officers and men dressed in civilian clothing who were leading these tribesmen into Kashmir towards Srinagar. And we were very lucky. It was like they say, we were literally saved by a thread, or else beautiful Srinagar would have fallen as well. That was the first, and as you all know, that battle continued. It's continuing even today. The struggle for Kashmir is continuing even today. The Pakistan keeping on the same theme. But another war came, another adversary came about in 1962 when the Chinese attacked India. And today, that war, gentlemen, we must remember it was our only defeat post-independence. And we must remember it as a defeat for the simple reason we do not allow it to happen again. And today, it is China who is the greatest threat. That same things that took place in 62, the same threat is resurfacing. So we have to be really prepared to counter it. Just 3 years later, one more war came upon India. The 1965 India-Pakistan war, in which Pakistan, remember when we were weak in 62, the Pakistanis were stronger. They were very strong in those days. They had received new equipment, tanks from USA, missiles, jets, for everything. And they decided to attack India in 1965. And luckily for us, the soldiers held firm. When their tanks attacked in the area of Amritsar, they were flooded because we opened all the canals, flooded the entire fields. The tanks were literally bogged down, and we captured 97 brand new tanks in this battle. This war of 65 was in many ways, it ended when we had the upper hand. Perhaps had we continued it, we would have really been able to push them back. But no, it stopped out there. But then the wars between India and Pakistan did not really stop. Because just 6 years later came another war, the War of 1971, which was India's greatest victory and whose 50th anniversary we are celebrating right now, even as we speak. This is a war I want to lay a lot of emphasis upon, to tell you more about how it took place. But before, I will not do that now. We shall have a special session for it next Sunday, and in which I will tell you in detail about the 71 war. My aim of today's talk was to give you an overview of India's military history right from the beginning, almost to the present day. And if I have been able to arouse your curiosity and your interest, I think It will give you something to think, to read upon even more, and build up your knowledge of where we did good and where we did bad. You all must understand the importance of these battles and how it shaped India. One of the things you all must remember is most of the time we lost was because we were divided from within. And if we have to, even today, I can see it happening. This is something which all of us as Indians must ensure, that those divisions, we have paid such a heavy price of it. We must never forget that. And we must ensure that these divisions never resurface amongst us again. With this, I have come to the end of my small talk. Should you all have any questions or any additions or any observations, I am at your disposal.